Hey guys! In a series of videos about FNAF Old and New, we'd like to start giving background information on themes found in the franchise. Maybe alternating videos, one being an info dump and the next being a theory.
So we're going to talk about what seems to be the elephant in the room of the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise that no one seems to be talking about, and actively avoiding. Why did the Purple Man kill these children? What reason does he have? Why would he do such a horrible thing? The Purple Man is a child molester. His motivation was kidnapping and molesting the children. Killing them was to cover up what he'd done. Or it may have been sexually motivated, meaning that the killing and ritualized disposal of the bodies gave him sexual gratification. Let's define some of the terms we'll be using. Pedophile. Pedophilia is a clinical term that describes a person who has had repeated arousing fantasies, sexual urges, or behaviors related to sexual activities with children for at least 6 months. Any older child or adult who touches a child for their own sexual gratification. Child molestation can also be an older child or adult exposing the child to their genitals or to pornography. A child is a person who is 13 years of age or younger. Pedophiles do not necessarily have to act on their urges. Child molesters can have the same attraction to children, but they do act on their urges. Abuse. Sexual abuse, also referred to as molestation, is forcing undesired sexual behavior by one person upon another. When that force is immediate, of short duration, or infrequent, it is called sexual assault. Acts such as, but not limited to, rape, highly suggestive leering, groping, forced kissing, and torture for means of sexual gratification are all types of sexual abuse. Sexual abuse of a child also includes indecent exposure, exposing a child to pornography, or making pornography of said child.
Psychopathic tendencies, which include uncaring cold-heartedness and callous unconcern for the feelings of others, shallow emotions, or a lack of remorse or shame. Irresponsibility, i.e., they blame others for things that are their fault. Insincere speech, glibness, superficial charm, pathological lying. Overconfidence, a grandiose sense of self-worth. Narrowing of attention, things like impulsivity, emotional processing issues, selfishness, pathological egocentricity, or radically self-absorbed. Inability to plan for the future, lack of realistic long-term goals, inability to follow a life plan. And lastly, violence. A very low tolerance to frustration and a low threshold for discharge of aggression, including violence. Irritability and aggressiveness as indicated by repeated physical fights or assaults. Antisocial behaviors. People can begin showing signs of antisocial behavior as children and becomes evident in their adult lives. Things like disregard for right and wrong, persistent lying, or deceit to exploit others. Using charm or wit to manipulate others for personal gain or for sheer personal pleasure. Intense egocentrism, a sense of superiority, recurring difficulties with the law, repeatedly violating the rights of others by the use of intimidation, dishonesty, and misrepresentation. Child abuse or neglect. Hostility, significant irritability, agitation, impulsiveness, aggression, or violence. A lack of empathy for others and lack of remorse about harming others. Unnecessary risk-taking or dangerous behaviors, or abusive relationships. Irresponsible work behavior. Failure to learn from the negative consequences of behavior.
Serial killer. A serial killer is a person who murders 3 or more people, usually due to an abnormal psychological gratification, with the murders taking place over more than a month and including a significant break, a cooling-off period, between them. We are not condemning people with psychopathic tendencies or those with antisocial personality disorders, as mental wellness challenges of all sorts should not be stigmatized, and we should always try to be as supportive as possible. We are, however, absolutely condemning child abuse and murder. Let me say that again. People with mental illnesses are not evil, and having a mental illness, even the ones we described here, does not make a person a monster. Not in the slightest. However, nothing is an excuse for child abuse and murder.
While there is buckets and buckets of in-game lore to go through, let's take a look at some real-world statistics to get a grab on this topic, and see how they apply. A Bureau of Justice statistics survey of state prisons said that the majority of child molesters knew their victim before the crime. A third had committed their crime against their own child. Over half had a relationship with the victim as a friend or acquaintance, like a security guard at a restaurant dedicated to children, or a relative other than offspring. 95% of molested children knew their molesters. 60% of sexual abusers are known to the child, but are not family members, such as family friends, babysitters, or neighbors. In a report from the Washington Attorney General, most of the victims of child abduction murder are victims of opportunity, about 57%. Only in 14% of cases did the killer choose his victim because of some physical characteristic of the victim. The primary motivation of the child abduction murder is sexual assault. Child molesters come from all backgrounds and social classes. However, most molesters, 1, are male, 2, work in an environment surrounded by children, 3, befriend the parents first and then gain the child's trust, and 4, attend events such as sports, camping, and video arcades. The most serious and chronic offenders often show signs of antisocial behavior as early as the preschool years. Among the victimizers of children, 2/3 have committed a rape or sexual assault. According to the self-reports of violent offenders, nearly 4 in 10 inmates incarcerated for forcible rape and more than 8 out of 10 incarcerated for forcible sodomy, and committed their crime against a victim who was below the age of 18. The FBI estimates that there is a sexual offender living in every square mile of the United States. Classic signs of sexual abuse include odd injuries, ripped clothes or underwear, depression, alcohol and drug abuse, hypersexuality, withdrawal, exceptional fear of a person or certain places, unreasonable fear of a physical exam, drawings that are scary or use a lot of black and red, and attempts to get other children to perform sexual acts. Children who are victims of sexual abuse can suffer many serious health effects, such as post-traumatic stress disorder, eating disorders, somatization, neurosis, chronic pain, sexualized behavior, learning disorders, animal cruelty, self-destructive behavior, suicide, antisocial behavior, sleeping difficulties and/or nightmares, angry outbursts, not wanting to be left alone, and further victimization into adulthood. However, not all victims show behavioral changes.
Some facts on kidnapping. In short-term abduction cases, the motivation is easier to evaluate, and investigation focuses primarily on sexual assault. Some children go with the offender voluntarily, with parental knowledge or permission. When they fail to return at the designated time, they are counted as abducted. Studies suggest that the use of abduction may stem primarily from the offender's poor interpersonal and social skills, and their otherwise inability to control their victims. Most abductions occur within a quarter-mile from the victim's home. 32% of child abductions take place on a street or in a car. Another 25% take place in a park or wooded area. It is also common for children to be abducted in places like arcades, theme parks, sporting events, and other highly populated areas with many sounds and distractions, allowing for children to become distracted and lured from their parents. In 46% of child abductions, the child is sexually assaulted. 75% of kidnapped children are murdered within 3 hours of their abduction. Some facts on child murder. Normally, the killers are at the initial victim-killer contact site for a legitimate reason. Sometimes they live in the area, or sometimes they work near there, or something else like they commonly visit a grocery store or restaurant. Most children killed who are under 5 years of age are killed by their parents, 63%. However, of the children not killed by their parents, 80% were killed by men. The average age of killers of abducted children is around 27 years old. They are predominantly unmarried, 85%, and half of them, 51%, either live alone or with their parents. Half of them are unemployed, and those that are employed work in unskilled or semi-skilled labor occupations. Therefore, the killers can generally be characterized as social marginals.
So with all of these facts at play, we can determine that the Purple Man is a child molester. He's an unskilled laborer with access to children. The children know him and are unafraid to interact with him, and their parents aren't afraid to leave their children alone at Freddy's because of his presence. It could be exceedingly easy to lure a child away, even if he exhibits antisocial behavior, since study shows that antisocial offenders show more propensity for abduction since they do not have the charm to groom a child for long-term abuse. A crowded, loud pizzeria full of children is an easy place to lose your child for a short while, and an easy place to abduct a child, especially if you know where the secret soundproof panic room is. We can infer a few things about the Purple Man from his occupation, security guard. People primarily become security guards because they've failed to become cops, either from failure of paper testing or psych evaluations. Study shows that in a self-report surveys that was conducted among 300 security guards in data collection, the findings identified 4 subtypes of mental health problems: substance abuse, antisocial personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, and depression experienced by the security guards. The security guards were also reported to be performing physical aggression, verbal aggression, anger, and hostility. We know from the fact that the Purple Man is a child murderer that he is violent.
Purple Man's particular disposal of the bodies is also an indicator of his criminology. He has poor long-term planning because he hid dead bodies and animatronics that people see every day that are directly tied to an establishment that he works at, giving the crime a direct tie to him. The other side is that the stuffing of the kids' bodies into the animatronic suits is a ritual that he is compelled to do as part of the murder. That leads to the fact that the most ritualistic killings have a sexual component. All of these factors lead to the Purple Man being a child molester that abducts children to fulfill some sort of sexual fantasy. He lures children away into the back with the spring Bonnie suit to the secret room. Then he molests them, possibly while wearing the suit, then stuffs the bodies into the animatronics as part of the ritual fetish. That's why the crying child from the 4th game is scared of the yellow suits, and since the rate at which child molesters protect each other when discovered, it's highly likely that while the person inside the Fredbear suit in the 4th game is not the Purple Man, he is also a child molester and the crying child's primary abuser, judging from how terrified of him he is. We have more theories about the 4th game, but we'll save that for another video. And speaking of other videos, we'll also be making a part 2 of this video, in which we'll demonstrate all the evidence from the various games to support the fact that the core story of Five Nights at Freddy's is that several children were abducted and sexually abused by the Purple Guy, and then murdered and stuffed into animatronic suits.
So that's all for today. If you liked this video, please give us a thumbs up, and if you're excited for our next theory video, go ahead and subscribe. Thanks!